recording here again. Great. All right. So, like I said, we're just waiting for Steve Daniel to join us, Dr. Steve Daniel, and we're talking about how quantum techniques and the modality of quantum techniques and stem cells can kind of join together to help help people. So yeah, someone says they're here from New Zealand, and so that's great that you're here. It's neat to see where everybody is from. It's exciting to be able to have this capability, being able to talk to people all around the world. So that's really fun. So welcome, Anne. Welcome, Rob, Renee, Jody. It's so nice to see you here. There's another, it looks like Patricia. We've got Victor and Sonia. Great, Sonia, to see you. Not sure where you're all traveling in the world, but it's always a fun journey to see your posts. So I think you're a little put here for now, but that's kind of fun. All right, let's see if I've got some more. Yes, I got some more people coming in, so let me admit them. All right. Yeah, and you let me know where you're from. That would be great, as we're kind of waiting for Steve to come on. Hey there, Steve.
I've been trying to get on.
I just don't have any volume, so.
You don't hear me. Okay.
Oh.
I don't know how to fix that.
Nope, it's me. So let me
Okay.
I hear him.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, let's try that.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes. I had
Okay.
something else that was going at the same time, so that helped.
Sound like a phone commercial. Right? Yeah.
All right. Got a couple more people that are joining us, so just kind of trying to admit them as they come in. So
I had a kind of a late IT emergency. I'm going to step out for 1 minute while you do that. I'll be right back.
okay. And Meryl, I'm just going to put you on mute so that way we can have really good sound today. Sonia says she's in Turks and Caicos. I was been walking on my treadmill in Antigua, and I've thought of you. The water is so beautiful. So great. Yeah, lots of snow, different places, and then other places got warm. It was nice in spring this morning. We got the daffodils are starting to bloom here, and there's a certain tree that's blooming, but I mean, it was just gorgeous. It was like when I went on the walk with my dog this morning, and then now it's like cold and windy. All right, Eduardo, welcome. I'm going to put you on mute so that we have good sound quality today. All right.
I'll probably regret this, but I wore this shirt in the memory of Valentine's Day for all of us men, or do our best. So I'm going to stand up so you can read it. The reason evolution started. I love it. Oh, that's a good one. All right. Well, good. We got lots of people joining today, and I always like to give about 5 minutes for people to wait. So, yeah. So, has it been cold where you're at, Steve? Or yeah, it's we got about 40-mile-an-hour winds, about 30 degrees, and they're expecting 2 to 5 inches of snow tonight.
Wow.
Right now it's melting as soon as it hits, but I decided not to take my dog walk today. So.
All right.
Rosie wasn't very excited about that.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago it rained here for 5 days, and I still have a gloomy dog because of it. I feel like she has the seasonal blues. But well, I did find that she had dragged mold in, and so she was picking up mold. So luckily I know how to clear that.
Well, I gave my dog a special bone since it's Valentine's Day, and she's my sweetheart. So
there you go.
You'll forgive me.
Yeah. All right. Well, looks like we're ready to start. Looks like I have a couple people joining, so I'll admit those. So I'll just keep going as they come. So welcome, everyone. Appreciate you coming. Our goal here is to help bring healing to chaos. And sometimes when we're dealing with health issues, we're trying to look outside the box to find out what's going on happening and what we can do about it. And so that's what we're talking about today is, okay, the next step in that is everything we've been through and learned with quantum techniques is what is stem cells and how can stem cells help our body heal, and how can we use that idea of stem cells with quantum techniques to help the body heal. So it's a fascinating topic, and I've really enjoyed it, and we got a lot of information for you. So Steve, why don't you start by kind of giving some people might be here and understand all of quantum techniques, but just give your healing story and I'll give mine, and we can kind of start that way.
Okay. Well, one thing, I was a math major, so I have trouble with spelling. And when I got the outline from Jody, there was what it looked like an error. It said, instead of bring healing to chaos, it said bringing healing to cause.
Yeah.
But you know what? No. That might have been a Freudian slip. Because most traditional and even non-traditional issues says, here's your symptom. How can I alleviate the symptom? They rarely ask what is causing the problem and what is blocking it from healing. Well, that's cause. And when you're chasing a lie, for example, the problem with my depression is I need a drug. Oops, I thought I turned this phone off. I got to turn this phone off. I turned off the volume, but it's a brand new phone, so I don't have to do a lot. But, if you look at that, and the cause of your depression is not a Prozac deficiency, it's because of maybe emotional issues, or you have a food toxin, then what are you doing? You're just chasing chaos. So for me, it was a very appropriate thing to look at and realize, and I don't know if you've ever looked at our logo, but that's what it shows. It shows an order, like an orderly dark star, light star breaking up, moving from order to chaos, darkness to light. And so, and this comes from many years of doing a lot of work, but also the spiritual truth consciousness issues. Truth will always be your friend. It may not tell you what you want to know, but truth will heal, and there is no lie or deception that's going to help you heal. And so the thing I've worked with complex cases over the years, which I think is really our greatest skill set, is we ask a different set of diagnostic questions. So for me, short story, I'd had migraines. My mom had migraines. I had a migraine for 7 years, working every day as a psychologist. And to be honest, if I did not have children to raise, I would not have chosen to live through that. It was that bad. And I did, neurology, psychology, acupuncture, everything you could do, and they had no answers. And then I got into my introduction to energy medicine was thought field therapy. And they had I would say we're thought field therapy on steroids. Okay. I found that I was taking at the time 19 different supplements or medication prescribed by alternative health practitioners and regular physicians. 18 of the 19 were poisons for me. I also found that a lot of my foods were triggering migraines. Why did this happen? Well, I got a head injury when I was 13, which caused a physical weakness. I did welding without protection for many years. I had a mouthful of mercury, and then I went to grad school. Grad school was great, but the moldy house I lived in for 3 years, where we bleached the wall with the black mold, which nobody knew about, after that, I became chemically and food sensitive and didn't know it. None of that mattered. I didn't have all that knowledge then, but once I realized I was toxic, and the supplements and medication they were giving me to, quote, cure the problem, they never asked what caused the problem. I stopped all doing that. I got better than I'd been in many years. Now I have other therapies, and we've advanced QT a lot since then. I mean, this was 25 years ago, 30 years ago. For me, another form of therapy that was very helpful because of my head injury was craniosacral. And I've done various body works, and I'll try them all, but and then I have a new form of therapy. Somebody's looking to train with us called ego skew. I would think about it as a type of physical therapy that they analyze your body and they give you some simple exercises to do. And I believe that anything that helps, whether it's massage or acupuncture or chiropractic or ego skew method, it's actually energy medicine. It's connecting informational pathways for things to move. So I have found other therapies that worked, and I'm not against traditional medicine. If I'm in pain and it's a non-toxic painkiller, I'll take that so I can function while I'm working to figure out what's the cause of the problem.
Mhm.
So that's really been my model. I'm open to everything, but if I'm not open to toxic supplements or medications or things that proven they don't work for me.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for sharing. And we're just grateful that, you did continue to search to find what the issue was instead of just saying it was just too much. So I appreciate that a lot.
And that's kind of where we are with post-COVID stuff now.
Mhm. Yeah.
We're just searching. We don't have all the answers yet, but we know God's going to provide them.
Mhm. Yeah. So my healing story and how I got into quantum techniques is that I'd known Steve forever. At age 13, my grandpa passed away, and so my parents thought at age 13 that's pretty intense on a child, and so Steve was doing psychology, and so I went to him, and so our families became friends, and so throughout college I would just come back, and every so often if I needed something I would kind of come see you and things like that. And I think it was somewhere in the late 90s you kind of said, hey, I got this new tapping thing, and so you kind of introduced us to that, and it really did help with some issues I had in college in regards to traumas with wind, and that's the one I remember the most. And so we've just kind of been friends and kind of connected. And then somewhere around in the 2000s, you started adding people to your practice and teaching them how to do the modality. And so I was interested in that. But I also, me and my husband had gotten married. And then after a while, we decided we wanted to have children. And I had a hard time conceiving. And so we started, doing some of the IUI and IVF treatments. But at the same time, kind of checking in with Steve and saying, okay, well, what is it that you're seeing that we're getting information from the doctor? And it's kind of that same way with COVID. We kind of look at what's happening with everything and what people are saying. They're saying, okay, well, what do we find muscle testing on? Is that the same or different, or, how do those relate? And so taking that knowledge from other people and being able to understand what's going on in our body. So what we found was that I had taken a wild yam supplement as an herb, and it had coated my uterus with a kind of a film in some way that certain, when the egg was ready to attach, it wouldn't release that kind of hormone that the egg could do that. And so it would slough off. And so using quantum techniques, we were able to say, okay, yeah, we don't need that herb there anymore. We don't want that. And to reconnect that hormone so that I could get pregnant. And so I did. And so because I have my son now, and it's like, that was such a healing process in my life. I wanted to share it with more people. And so that's how I became a practitioner. But as I've lived life and as I've done QT, I've been able to look back just like Steve and say, hey, why did I had issues with infertility? And so it's trying to answer those questions, why. And so, sure enough, I lived in a dorm in college that had a lot of heavy metals in the water, had a mold also. And the food that they ate was all, at that time, vegan, but to supplement the vegan and good vegetables and stuff like that, they would either put cheese over everything, or they would supplement with soy. And right about 92, in the 90s, they started adding, glyphosate to soy and making a GMO and that kind of stuff. And so it became toxic for me. And so those three things involved, we kind of talk about having that's a shift or a change in your health. And so we can go back and find out, oh yeah, that's the time that something happened and it can impact you. So what the beauty of QT is we can use quantum physics. That's why we quantum techniques, because we can go back in time and find out exactly where that was. What was what we call the terrain change? What was the shift that made your health go from here to not being good anymore? And so that's the beauty of what we do. So that's kind of why we got into it. And it's just, I'm so grateful.
Well, and if we just add to that, Jody had a cell surface receptor field blocked by that yam supplement.
Mhm.
You have a lot of other things, mostly virus and bites, that block cell surface receptors.
Mhm.
And that really feeds into what we're talking about today with stem cell. If I think about what is, I'm going to call it, quote, unnatural aging, is that when the toxicity of our lives starts blocking our normal youth, health, endocrine system hormones, where they can't get through and do their job anymore. Kind of like, hey, everything was there for you to be fertile, but it was blocked at that cell wall level. So I think from what I'm seeing, and we'll get into it more later, is if we can get the toxicity field to work, and that seems to be where the stem cells go most,
Mhm.
then maybe we can get the body to clear those before they get stuck in a bad way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So let's see if I can share my screen. Now, can you guys see a bucket?
Yeah.
Great. So this is just an example of kind of one of the things that helps is an illustration to help us understand what we're saying. So you can see we have a symptom field up here, and those are the things that you have. You have whether it's heart attack, rashes, hives, anxiety, insomnia, hypertension, upset stomach, headaches. Those are all symptoms expressed. Okay. And so, yeah, you could take a pill to solve these and you see what would happen. It would cover up the symptoms, but we're wanting to know the why. What's underneath that? So you can see I have a bucket of issues. It could be heavy metals. It could be pathogens, food toxins, weak boundaries with people, stress, dental work, medications, vaccines, anesthesias. All those things create, and traumas, create blocking beliefs. All those things create that bucket that starts rising and having an issue so that you have the symptoms. So we have to go kind of figure out what those are that are behind it. And you can see the logo there that kind of is what Steve was explaining. One side is the sun, which is together, and then the other part is just unorganized and chaos. So one of the quotes that we really like is saying that gene mutations, all of us have gene mutations like MS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, but they get expressed when we have been exposed to these kind of toxins or a certain lifestyle or foods or emotions and how we see the world or traumas or radiation or anesthesias. What we do at Quantum Techniques is to prevent the expression of these genes with our clients. So that's a kind of a great visual of what we do. So Steve, you want to talk about kind of the biology of belief? Because I think that's another foundation of what Quantum Techniques is, and then we can go on with stem cells.
Well, biology of belief says that 97% of us are born with good DNA. And then something happens in the environment, physical or non-physical, that where our body starts coding for disease. And when the author wrote this, and I saw him in a presentation, he pulled up his long sleeve shirt and it had written MS Parkinson's on the side. And he pulled the sleeve down. He said, all of us have genetic coding for disease. What happens in our environment? And that can be emotional trauma, which we know is a huge factor, or toxicity, determines whether or not we express that code. So what we do know is that early emotional trauma or unresolved trauma does shut down the immune system and detoxification. To the degree that most of your energy is spent consciously or unconsciously running from the tiger, you have less to digest food, be happy in life, have an immune system. So that's one factor. But once that process happens, then the toxicity, and if you put the word chronic in front of anything, you have a toxicity issue. Now, it could be chronic toxicity because you're bad on wheat and you're eating every day. It can be chronic toxicity because you're living in a toxic relationship or I have a toxic boss. But if something's not going away, the body made it to do, something's blocking your healing. So that's one level of toxicity. Now, the second level is, do you have old hidden toxicity in the body? And that can be vaccines. Like my mom had a lot of heavy metals in her mouth. She had been on a lot of psychiatric drugs. So we had that. We had food allergies that we didn't know about. So those were, I'll say, born with toxicity, things that with stress and other things got expressed. But even then, how that gets expressed is different. Like I have an older brother who was born with Marzoff syndrome, which is like what Abraham Lincoln had: sunken chest, long, thin. And, he's had some heart murmurs, some health issues. He eats the same toxic diet I was raised with, but he doesn't have any headaches. He has weight gain, other things. My younger brother was almost didn't make birth, and they gave him gamma globulin shots. He has the same toxicity. Neither one of my brothers have ever had headaches, but he's got hypertension, obesity, other anxiety, other issues. So what I'm saying is, probably if I didn't have the head injury, I might have expressed my illness differently. I'd rather get a head injury and learn from it, even if it took me 25 years, than to die of heart disease because I didn't know what was toxic and changed my diet. So if we go back to blood studies, I'm much healthier than my brothers, but I've been on an extremely healthy diet program. I'm 69 next month since I was 19. Otherwise, I would be very overweight like they are.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to realize, that sometimes we want something solved quickly,
Right.
but it's always a lesson for us and we learn better, and, even Avery had a lot of, my son had a lot of gluten and dairy intolerance. And so then we started eating better. And so now we're healthier as a whole family because we have to eat better. So, and it's helped us be a good example, now that he's a teenager and wants to eat all the bad stuff.
And if I could have taken a magic pain pill, 40 years ago and stopped having migraines, QT wouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't have pain, but I'd be weighing about 350 and be unable to walk because of heart disease.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how we incorporate stem cells into this model that we're talking about. So I just had some quotes. Tony Robbins just wrote a book about life force, and he talks about stem cells in there. And I think he has several different quotes in there that I think are helpful for us to understand a little bit more about stem cells if you don't know. So stem cells are the basic building blocks of every issue or organ in the body. They help to transform reactive sick care into productive precision healthcare. There are two unique superpowers. They can divide and renew themselves. So that's what stem cells do. They have the superpower of to divide and then to renew as they divide. They can differentiate into the different types of cells that our body needs. So they can become skin, they can become bone, they can become muscle, blood, liver, heart, brain. So they can all become different parts of those. Stem cells can either can also strengthen our immune system, and they can keep us healthy and strong. Stem cells are the body's repair kit. They deliver the raw materials, the molecular signals to grow different factors in the body and enable us to starve off disease, bounce back from injury, and live our lives with optimal energy and peak performance. From the moment we are born, our stem cells, we have a stem cell reservoir that we're using from. And as they start drying up as we become older, and that is kind of like the main cause of aging, is that stem cells start drying up. So when we reach about 25 to 30, that's when, from that point, then our stem cells start to decay from there.
and they accelerate as we get older. So our bodies start running into problems that they no longer can fix. And, all of us have kind of seen, kind of teenage, younger people, they can kind of eat whatever they want and they kind of get away with it. And the more older you get, you're like, you can't do that anymore. But it's that body's not ability to regenerate itself. The most abundant source of fresh stem cells is in placenta. So Steve, I'd like you to kind of tell your story of what you learned about stem cells from there.
Traditional medicine has been using stem cell for trying to heal joint issues for a while. And I've actually got a right elbow I destroyed years ago. I live with it. I had it evaluated last year. And they say, well, you got these bones that aren't connected, because of missing connective tissue. And if they're bothering you, we can go in and cut the bone off. It's like, that didn't appeal to me a lot. I have a high pain tolerance, and I can do a lot of things. There's just like, I can't go out and frame a house anymore, or I don't think I could play tennis with that, unless I learn to use the other hand. But so that's not on the plate. So there are 3 sources of stem cells. Now, one is they take your own fat cells and they create some. But like my physician said, well, you're 69, it's not like they're pups, So it's kind of like, oh, I need a new car to drive me across the country. Do I want to get something and rebuild it with 190,000 miles on it, or do I want to buy a new one? Okay. So there's 2 other sources of stem cells. One is neonatal from aborted fetuses, which I have an issue with. And the other one is they take with specially screened people in certain institutions that are set up for it. After the baby is born, they take umbilical cord blood. Okay, and so I got a stem cell injection of that. I got it in early December, and it was like, 1 ml, a push IV. And I did it first without doing any quantum techniques on. Now, because it's my right elbow that's damaged, then they injected it in my right forearm in an IV, closest to one of my problem areas. And so, I waited a week, and then I went back and I said, okay, what I noticed was fatigue from viral die-off. I didn't notice a lot within that first week. So at the end of the week, I said, well, let me do quantum techniques on this. Meaning, how do I show the body where my testing priority is it's supposed to go? And what I found in most people, cerebellum is number 1, cell memory is number 2, then the endocrine system, and then if you have an injury, like connective tissue. So I did that. That night, I had more of a healing crisis in terms of more viral die-off. About 3 weeks later, I was noticing better energy and mental clarity. And then I've had some other issues I'm working on, so I did more stuff on myself and crashed myself, but that's something I do. I would say now that I'm 2 months out, I would say my elbow is significantly better. It's not completely clear, but it's significantly better. Now, when I got the actual injection, and I can send that information in terms of the specific place that both doctors recommended I get it from, they sent me a certificate of all the things that umbilical cord blood was free of diseases and all that stuff. But it was a $4,800 shot, a little push, and for me, it's like, if I can't work, it doesn't really make a lot of difference. I don't spend much money on myself. Most of it's on my dog anyway. So, it's like, I felt like, let me try this and see what this is like, because I don't do well with, for me, like 90% of a medication or an herb will test bad before I take it. If I take it after 3 days, 90% of those go bad. So my only concern was, which didn't make sense theoretically, and I tested, the best I could. Will there be causing some kind of toxicity from the injection? And I got no. And I still get that. When I got the injection, the doctor said, even if you want another one, they're saying takes about 5 years to complete its course. So the injection is a long-term process. You're probably not going to wake up the next day feeling like you're 12 years old. Okay. But what I've heard from clients is kind of similar, some viral detox fatigue, then gradually increasing energy and mental clarity. So that's what we've got right now. And then, yeah, that's pretty much the report on the shot. What were your thoughts, Jody?
Well, it's just, I think it was when you were sharing it with the QT team, you're kind of saying, you know, where you got it from and what your symptoms were and things like that. And so
Right.
I know there's, as stem cells started, you know, like being a modality, and a lot of webinars have talked about it, and where they had to go to Mexico to get it and things like that. You know, it kind of started, like you said, from whether you take it from yourself or whether you get it from, you know, placenta. And that, you know, and so you kind of explained why that was important to do it, because, you know, then you're starting with younger ones.
Right.
And they don't come from aborted fetuses. It comes from, you know, normal born kids. So yeah, so I think it's just interesting to see kind of what you've experienced, and then how you were able to use QT with it, and see how it helped. So what you did is, to our QT team, you brought that information back and said, okay, you came up with you know, code that really helps it be better and to help clear things, and so you have a little bit more healing from the injection that it did. And we did have one of our practitioners that also had it done, and so her experience compared to what your experience was interesting to kind of see that comparison. And then, you know, both of you kind of had a little bit of die-off. It seemed like with quantum techniques, you're able to minimize the die-off, you know, from that. So that was helpful. So,
Well,
go ahead.
and you know, so since I have it in my body, I can create a unique code for stem cell.
Mhm.
And so when I talk about my clients, they're not getting the injections, they're doing that code.
Yeah.
And for most of them, it tests about 90% as effective as the roughly $5,000 injection itself.
Mhm.
And they're having kind of, that's what I was talking about when I was saying, you know, fatigue for a week, you know, viral die-off, increased energy and mental clarity over time. That's whether it's the injection I had, which I've noticed, but also the people who've only done the code.
Mhm. Right. And so when I was introduced to LifeWave, which is a phototherapy, and so they have these, you know, stem cell patches, and they you can put those on. They're about, you know, quarter, a little bit bigger than a quarter, and they have a sticky on the back. And you put them different places on your body. They typically put it behind the neck where your cerebellum, or just, you know, below your cerebellum, or on the, or below your belly button. And what Steve found with me is, you know, I've been using those, and I do find an improvement, but you don't sometimes, I don't have a lot of chronic stuff in my body, and so I can't quite tell if it's working, kind of thing. But I know I feel great, and I'm have a lot of vitality and energy, and so I know it's like not working, kind of thing. But what you found is, when testing me, if I use that plus I use the QT code, it made the patches 30% more effective. So it was like boosting up what I was doing. So, you know, if you didn't get the shot, that would be another thing to do, is, you know, to do the LifeWave patches to try to help, especially if you have a chronic issue. So it's just kind of another way, combining different modalities and different things that can help with that.
Well, let me just add to that, kind of a side note. I think that all healing is energetic.
Mhm.
So over the years, I found, let's say I have a client that had a phenomenal acupuncture treatment or lymphatic massage. I can go in and say, what's the energetic frequency the body sent of that code, and give them that code. And they can do that code along with their regular practitioner, and it makes it much more powerful because they're reinforcing it every time they read the code. And that's kind of like what we're talking about with the stem cell code. And what you're saying, you've got this frequency on you, but by doing this, it's increasing its effectiveness.
And I had an opportunity to work with a dog that had a injury, but the injury was the result of a toxicity field with pesticides and heavy metals with viruses like all in between. But it showed up as an issue with their the back muscles and also then the knee joints and patella. And so I worked with that dog for a month and kind of clearing, giving the stem cells. They did the LifeWave patches, they did my code, and just clearing layer by layer to clear what was in between all those layers of mast cell histamine reactions that he was seeing, and he's much better. It's been exciting to kind of watch to see how the dog has responded to it. And like every time when we work with somebody, it's fascinating that sometimes they're like really in the ditch. They got physical issues, emotional issues. They're carrying a lot of emotions. This particular dog was in a house where someone had surgery, and so he felt like he had to like be the man of the family, and support everybody. And so once we cleared that, then it was like he was just in the sailing of getting well, and it was really neat to see that. I think that sometimes as quantum techniques, we can watch a client when they come in and their journey. And sometimes people, really do check in with us, clear that sludge, and it was about a month until everything was clear. So it was really fun to watch. So those are the fun ones. And the other thing I wanted to say is that my mom fell and broke her hip. And so she's been using the stem cells patches to help her. And then also giving her this stem cell code also. And so that's been very helpful in her journey in getting well. So I realized here, I actually don't have a question and answer. I must have left that out. So if there is question and answers, we'd love to take those now so we can answer what questions you might have from what we've talked about or your experience with stem cells. So yeah, Anne, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yeah, two things. One is, what is the mechanism by which the stem cell infusion, whether it's however it comes in, causes viral die-off? Are the viruses hidden viruses that have been sitting there unrecognized? Or why does that kick up die-off? Because I had that, and I was pretty wiped out for about the first 2 weeks.
I'll give you my understanding at the moment. That may be different in a week, but if when I look at whether that's been the code like I gave you or the actual stem cell injection, the number one point of activity, if I said, what's the most affected organ? It's been the cerebellum. Number two is cell memory. Now, cerebellum is the master computer for how can my body detox or not detox. Okay. Cell memory is, do I have access to my original genetic blueprint, or is that corrupted? So the stem cells going in and saying, well, here's all the stuff you've been missing and not been able to deal with. Okay. And we got to clear this out to get you back to, if I want to say youth, or your original genetic blueprint. And so, like, if we talk about for you, if I just test you right now, want to be healthy, want to be sick. Okay. Before the stem cell, if you want your cerebellum, we rate different organs different ways. Cerebellum should be a 17. It was an 8. Right now, it's a 12. I've never seen somebody increase their cerebellum function without having to go through some detox. And it tends to be much more viral in most cases. Now, like when I did the stem cell for myself, I went back and I put it in the code. And what was I detoxing? I had 1 day of old man-made frequencies, chemicals, whatever, from various times. After that, it's been all viruses. That's all I get is virus But again, think about this. The only pathogen that can penetrate the DNA, penetrate the cell wall and change the DNA, now we're talking about, epigenetics, is a virus.
Mhm.
So old viruses that the body cannot see or detox are in there doing bad stuff. Now, what I found, at least for me and most of the people that I've done this with, and again, it's a small sample because it's been less than 2 months, is that the viruses are usually dead. They're not running all over the body, but they're in the cerebellum cell memory, blocking the body's ability to detox so that its natural youth hormones work, and blocking it from getting back to its original genetic blueprint.
Okay, so the die-off isn't necessarily that live viruses are getting killed. They're dead ones in there
Right.
holding an inaccurate genetic code.
Right. I would use the word sludge more than die-off, because they're not actually alive pathogens in almost all cases. I may have seen 1 or 2 that are not that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so and the second question is, so the difference between those little patch things and what you got, they have different codes. So are there going to end up being different, like stem cell codes that you generate that might hit things in any kind of different way? Is this, to me, it seems like you're just beginning, that there's probably a lot of room for refinement of how to tailor a stem cell code much better than a doctor injecting something from somebody's umbilical cord, and you didn't, at least consciously in the physical realm, have a choice about whose umbilical cord blood you got, and yet can you tailor a stem cell code to fit how a person is
Right.
frozen?
And see, that's the difference between just everybody reading the code. It doesn't take long, but if a practitioner says, okay, what's the body's priority? In other words, what are the organ glands and tissues that are important? And then your unconscious or your healing self has helped directing that process, not just wherever it goes in the body. I think that's how we tailor it to each person. I don't plan to get another stem cell. It might be different. I know my donor was a little girl. I don't think it makes any difference.
So you're saying that the code may look the same on paper, but how our body uses it is going to be personal to what's needed.
And that's the purpose of checking with a practitioner and saying, okay, we're going to use this code. Where does your body want it? That doesn't take very long.
Mhm.
Like when I gave you the code, that's what I did for you. So if somebody else read that same code, I'm not sure, it's not going to be as effective because it wasn't tailored for that person, but it's not going to hurt. But like you say, this is very new. It's like the other practitioner that did actual stem cell injections is older and used their own fat, and they didn't notice anything. I've had someone younger than me, and they did it twice using their own fat from different experts. Didn't notice anything. They did notice something in terms of their energy levels, their mental clarity, and like you, that fatigue detox for 2 weeks from the stem cell code. So I don't have a lot of data yet, but that's what I got.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
All right, so Sonia has a question. What you got for us? Well, let's see. Get you unmuted here. You unmute, Sonia?
I know. Got it. Hello. Hi, Stephen. Yeah, I have a question. So I do have a stem cell. So I work with Stephen, and my question is, so as my understanding so far, so once you have the treatment, it can take a time overall, like it can still improve over time. And then if I have different issues, can I check the stem cell treatment for every individual issue, or would I retest and get a new code if I work on a new issue? Or so for example, I'm working on my knee, as you know, for a while, and it's getting better. Now, if it's, can it be very specific to one area besides of the general stem cell treatment? Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yep.
So what I would say is you're probably not going to change the code, but if we did it wouldn't take it, I'm quick, 5 minutes. Then we would look at, going into that question and saying, first of all, what's the field the stem cells need to go into to heal that? And, I always look at, do we have 100% of all spokes? Is everything online? And then I would ask, is there something blocking that from getting where it needs to go or doing its work? And if there's something there, I would look at removing that. So it would be more like just a quick, deeper level on you're not getting the results you wanted. And I don't know that I had anything I specifically wanted. I wanted to have better energy. And, I figured at this point in my life, I don't spend any money myself. Why not do it? And I thought, no, maybe it'll go in the elbow. So that's how I would approach it. But like I say, it wouldn't take as long, 5-7 minutes.
Yes. And I call it, it's more like for the understanding. And so double checking it, I do this regularly anyway, but is it at some point you test and it's over is maybe the wrong, but it's fully completed? Or can it take, as you said, you can say it can even take up to a couple of years? Can you test it like, hey, this is 100% complete now, and then there's nothing more to do? I mean, as far as we know now, I don't know what's gonna be in the future, but
right. Again, short-term information. So far, and I haven't really spent much time looking at this, I haven't found other frequencies blocking the stem cell expression. I brought that up because that's how I approach everything. We know this unwraps over time. So like if I ask for myself, and it might be field specific. So if I say, is 100% of my stem cell treatment, completely online? Yes. So for my elbow, for our best of our ability, what level of healing is completed? 50s, I get 60%. Okay. Now, if I check, what about my adrenal exhaustion? I'm getting about 60%. Okay. So maybe that, and I could, if I think about mental clarity at 60%, but that's, for me, that's a brain energy, it's a cortisol issue. So even though I've had the shot and it's completely online, but the work it's going to do is only 60% completed. So if we check that for you, and we just check, I want to be healthy, you want to be sick, you're not reversed. Your knee healing from a stem cell code is only 50% of what it's going to do. Mm-hmm. The code's 100% online. Okay. Now, I might, if we think about real quickly, functional stem cell activation process, functional stem cell migration process, I don't get something there. So I don't get anything blocking it. If we check that, do we have 100% of all known and unknown spokes, all 13 charge modes, all frequencies for this completion of migration? That's where I get it's online. It's going to take time, kind of like my elbow.
Yeah, great. So you just keep working on it and reading it and checking it. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the shot and sharing it with us.
No worries.
Steve, that kind of brings up a little question I have is, so do we have to intentionally say, okay, this is my issue I want to work with, or can we say, I just would like stem cells for my overall body, and then the body's going to tell us when we do a QT code where it wants to go. So if we don't have, in other words, so if we don't have a major issue, do we just kind of say, okay, I'm doing stem cells, and just every so often make sure that everything's on and then it's going to the right places, or that?
The naturopath that did this is a spiritual person. And before they gave it, they said, why don't you take a minute and decide where you want this to go? So I think, if you don't have any ideas, think, I want health and wellness. I want youth. I mean, that's pretty simple. I think by us programming the code, then the body's saying, well, you need it here, here, and here, and here. So that's the advantage of a short scan and saying, where is it? Where does it need to go?
So the scan will help us direct where it is.
Correct. Yeah, it's the body's message about, here's my priorities where I want this frequency for healing.
Yeah, because a lot of times we have a priority and it has its own priority.
Right.
All right, thank you. All right, Sharon now has the question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Sharon. Yeah.
Hi, yes, Steve has worked with me a lot, and I've had a lot of issues with supplements and medications not being okay with me with MTHFR, especially all that. And so as he was going through, I was muscle testing what applied to me, and I came up with cell memory and heavy metals being an issue. And so one of the things that I experienced with the treatments over the years is what Steve calls pathogen anxiety. And so the die-off affects me significantly. And so I'm just wondering, is this an elevated example of what I already know if I do stem cell something?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you saying, will a stem cell cause die-off with more anxiety?
Yeah, well, is this another step of detox that's going to be difficult to deal with? Because I already have enough trouble with regular treatments, let alone stem cell.
That is very possible for you.
Okay.
Now, one of the things which also can cause detox, but we know more about it, would be a cerebellum scan, which is the master controller for detox. And maybe doing that and just like take little tiny bites of the pie before we do the stem cell would be a suggestion. And that's something, I can teach you how to do that and how to move forward real gently. But if we check right now, yeah, see your cerebellum, you want it to be a 17, it's only a 6.
And that's out of what? I don't know. Is this a new numbering system?
Well, cerebellum's always been a 17.
Okay.
The heart's at 12, everything else is at 10. Your cerebellum is a 6. And that's why you have so much trouble with detox.
Yeah.
And so I would look at probably doing a cerebellum scan before you do anything else and see how gently can we move on that. And that doesn't take me long.
Mm-hmm. And do you know if COVID has an influence on some of this stuff that we're talking about today?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I just keep finding another layer of COVID hidden somewhere. It's just, it's absurdity, you just can't find it, and then you find it again.
Well, since we've talked on this call, the only thing I've ever seen hide like COVID is cancer. And we call it an irregular cell scan because we can't say the word cancer if you're an alternative medicine.
Yeah.
I have found a way to find COVID with that scan. It's a one-time treatment and it doesn't take long, but so far I've not found live COVID with that. It's all dead pockets of COVID.
Right.
And most of, again, cerebellum cell memory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and it's interesting, the amount of COVID frequencies I find relates to how many times you've had COVID or vax or boosters. So if you've had COVID once, you'll probably find 5 frequencies. If you had it 2 or 3 times, you might count 15 frequencies. But COVID's not leaving the body like it's supposed to, as we know.
Yeah. I think I've had it 4 times. Okay. And I don't do the vaccines. I react to people that have vaccines. I can stand in front of somebody and I know, oh, he's had it.
Right. So maybe I get, the next step for you would be which I will teach you, which I always teach, is what I call the irregular cell scan for COVID, which finds hidden dead pockets.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No worries.
Steve, just so I have clarification too, is that kind of the mast cell activation scan? Is that the? the pocket through COVID, finding that.
No, that's the irregular cell scan.
Oh, okay, got it. Eduardo, you have a question? So go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Hi, Jody. Hi, Dr. Daniel. Yeah, when I was working with Dr. Daniel in 2019, I was bedridden. And one thing that I didn't mention is that I also did fasting. I don't know if people are aware. This might help people and clients or even Sonia. If you could do water fasting or even juice fasting to the point that you get into the state of ketosis, usually it takes like 3 days. So we've got to be willing to give up our meat and potatoes. And the only reason I did it is because there was a paper by Dr. Walter Longo from USC talking about prolonged fasting, hematopoietic stem cells. But I was doing this once a month. I was doing it 3 days. And I was just wondering with your scan and some of your clients, perhaps if they want to supercharge stem cell activation in the body. And I think the paper talked about a 300% increase. I just pulled it up here, but I just thought that might be beneficial.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I have seen where they talk about fasting for stem cell. That's never worked for me. I have blood sugar issues. Now, I basically fast every day after about 2 until like 5 the next morning. So I do intermittent fasting. But I can't, I'm one of those guys that can't fast and still work. But that's another research article I've seen. Yeah.
Okay. You know, I do remember that I did ask you about fasting, but I know that, like I said, for some people, if they have less adipose, less fat tissue, you can get into ketosis a lot faster. And you'll kind of know this. I can get there in about almost 2 days, but you'll notice that your urine, if you're on a water fast, your urine will turn that atomic yellow like you're on vitamins. And for other people, it'll take about 3 days. But just throwing that out there, it's a little tougher to do, but it can also be done on juice. Thanks.
You bet.
Yeah, Eduardo, I had never done a fast because, like Steve, I have low blood sugar issues, and it really, I have some. My parents didn't know I had low blood sugar issues, and I remember they took me to Europe, and we had some people we were staying with that just never fed us. I don't know what, and so I just remember going through Holland and seeing windmills and falling asleep. It's kind of one of those trauma fields. But anyway, but I listened to something and I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And let's see, Isaac on our team, he's really a component of fasting. So I tried it literally last week, and I was amazed at how much I did water one day, and then I did juice the next 2 days. Now, I probably didn't do juicing exactly the way they wanted me to. They got to get some bone broth and things like that. But I still did the protein shakes and stuff like that. But yeah, I was amazed just doing that one day really shifted and cleared so much almost emotional stuff and body stuff. I was amazed. And so that was just kind of my personal thing, just literally last week. So it doesn't work for everybody, but that's why we can muscle test and find out. And I was just in a place where I was ready to try it, to kind of shift myself to a different place. So thanks for sharing that. That was very helpful.
There's an interesting, I guess you call it a reality show called Naked and Afraid. So they put a couple people out in the jungle with a knife and a fire starter, and they pick them up in 21 days if they don't, cry out for mercy. And I've seen this more than once with different practitioners or different contestants who, after 3 days, felt emotionally and mentally better than they had ever been in their life. Now, part of that's fasting, part of that's they just got all the toxic food in their diet.
Mm-hmm.
And it just shows so much about our mental state. And it's like, these guys are out and getting bit by bugs, sunburn, drinking swamp water, naked as a jaybird, freezing their tooches off, but they feel better than they have in a long time. Well, that tells you something about what you're putting in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, very true.
I choose to be clothed and afraid. So.
All right. So right up at the hour, but I just wanted to kind of let you know that, obviously, as we've talked about stem cells, the best way for you to kind of get on track and find out how stem cells can help your body is by doing a one-on-one treatment with quantum techniques. And so we're offering to do the 60 minutes of that one-on-one time in the session. And if you sign up by this Friday, we'll give a $100 discount. And so it would be a $200 in this, for a treatment. Now, if you're all, and that's if you're a first-time client. If you've already a QT treatment or already have our QT client, we can certainly do the treatment and it doesn't take that long. But sometimes in a new client, there's a lot we have to cover before you kind of get started and let you know some things like we've been talking about. You know, maybe there's foods you're eating and maybe there's toxins you're taking in. So we need to kind of clear those before we kind of jump right into stem cells, because we need that clear some of that bucket as we talked about before. So the ways, so some of the things that resources we want to kind of give you today is one, I have an article about stem cells. So if you're wanting to have me to send you that article, please put your email in the chat, or you can also email me at jody@quantumtechniques.com and say you'd like the article on stem cells. And again, if you're already a QT client, we can do a session with you to find out what those stem cells is, find out where it needs to go in the body, and help you with die-off that may have, or that sludge, as Steve said, because they're not active. And then the third thing is I have a video that talks about the LifeWave stem cell X39. And so if that's something that you would like to know more about, I can send you a video about that. So those are three things that we're kind of offering is the article. And if you want to do a QT session for the stem cells, and then also the video on the stem cell patches. So I want to stay connected with you, and we've got these, you know, these great Zooms that we do once a month. Sometimes Steve joins us. Sometimes I have, you know, one I do on my own on a different health topic. So those announcements will go out so you can be aware, but you can also connect with me on my Facebook group. So that's Health Puzzle Academy. And that's a Facebook group that I run. I also have my YouTube channel, which is at Jody at Quantum Techniques. And so I put a lot of videos on there, different lives that I do in regards to different subjects and how you can use quantum techniques to find out why things impact you. You know, I just noticed that my dog was very, you know, sad this last week. And yeah, it was the weather, but I also found that, you know, she was sitting in the yard, and after it had rained for 5 days, there was a lot of mold in the yard. So she could bring it in. She would put them in her dog's beds. And then it was really impacting her. So it started growing fungal in her ears. But knowing how to use quantum techniques, you can find out where is it stemming from? What do we need to do? And so we can find out how to clean those up. So again, if you're new to quantum techniques, I'd like to do a session with you, 60 minutes for the discount price of $200 for that 60 minutes if you sign up by this Friday. And you can, I should put in the link, the quantum techniques code. So let me see if I can do that real quick. Sometimes I try to have this loaded up, and sometimes it's hard with everything going on. All right, so that's the link that you can go to have a session request, and I can send that to you. You also can, you know, email me a little bit more about, you know, the link to do that, to set up for a session. Let's see.
I'm going to have to sign off because I got a call.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I sure appreciate you coming in.
Have a great day.
All right. So, and if you haven't ever heard about QT, most people here have, and so I can certainly, you know, talk to you about the modality. And so a lot of times I do a 15-minute call with someone to see if this modality is helpful for you. And so if you're interested, I can kind of tell you more about it. We've covered a lot here, and so it's really fun. So just our whole goal is to help you find that root cause of your health problem, so that, like I said, we don't live in chaos. We don't live without cause. We're actually finding out what is causing it and how we can get healthy. So I'd love to see you next month, and I appreciate you attending. And if there's no other questions, and I just appreciate you guys coming in today. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes. All right. Great to see everybody. All right. Have a blessed rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye.